Hey all again, this is Claire, and I'm going to show you in a series of hopefully merged together videos about how I make my bi-weekly homemade pizza dough because it's Thursday, and on Thursdays, if our schedule was normal, we'd be watching Critical Role after eating pizza for dinner because D&D and pizza go well together. Because that's how you do. So, things I've got here on the counter: olive oil. I use two different kinds of flour. I've got unbleached all-purpose flour from King Arthur and this lovely organic einkorn flour, which says on the back somewhere, maybe here, that it is the last remaining sort of pure unhybridized strand. And what they do with this is they take the two parts of the wheat berry known as a coreopsis. Yes, I'm a botanist and I know fancy words. And take part of what makes it a whole grain away and put the rest back. So this is kind of a whole wheat flour, but if you look at the two, there's really not much in color. And this adds some whole wheat goodness to the pizza dough, but not too much that my husband can't handle it. Or me, to be honest. Got some salt back here. Got my nice bread bowl, which I believe was made for me by, well, bought by me from Ilariya Charmain, I think is her last name. This is my handy dandy dough whisk. A assorted amount of various measuring things that you'll recognize anywhere. Active dry yeast. Some nice garlic paste, which I'll explain in a little bit. There's a half of a teaspoon of sugar and some water. So the first thing we're going to do, oh, by the way, this serves 2 people because that's how many I'm feeding. I will post this recipe and you can also do the math and alter it for more. So first we add half a teaspoon of good old regular granulated sugar to the bowl. And all this is going to do is feed the yeast. That's all. You could omit that, but it's not going to go so bubbly so fast, and I'm in not a hurry, but I'm lazy. I'm not lazy. It's just how I do it. We've got here, you can use any old measuring cup. We've got my big one. Let's see, what's it measuring at? Ooh, slightly under. I think I'll put a little more in. So what we need is exactly 3 ounces of warm water. And let's do this real quick here. That's a little too much. And the reason you want warm water is it's going to help the yeast bloom. That's better. So we're going to put that in the bowl as well. It also helps that sugar dissolve. The third thing we're going to add, and it doesn't give me any kind of yeast here. I just happen to have active dry yeast. I've seen quick yeast. Some people are weird and like to go use sourdough, I guess. I have to put this down while I do this. We get half a teaspoon of that. Sprinkle that on the bowl. And now we're going to leave it alone for a little bit. If your kitchen is nice and warm, it can be as little as 5 minutes. If you've got a colder kitchen, or you just want to procrastinate a little, 15. It is currently 3:53. We'll come back and see in a little bit. Bye for now. Hello again, and we are back. So, we'll just have invisible face here. The yeast has sat for a while, and let's see if we can show you what it looks like with the camera. And it's gone all fluffy. It looks different than it did before, which means the yeast is working. If you've done this with a really old packet of yeast in the back of the cupboard and it doesn't look like it's fluffed out like that, it doesn't really work very well, which means you're not going to have a great rise to your pizza dough. So, the next thing I do, I take a half cup measuring cup. And if you're going to just use one flour, you'll want a full measuring cup. But as I said before, I do half and half. So, half a cup of the einkorn flour. Put that in there. Half a cup of regular flour. The next thing I do is I take my half teaspoon, take my sea salt, and I'm gonna add a half teaspoon of the sea salt. And the reason I didn't do this straight away is if you put the salt directly with the yeast, the salt will retard the yeast growth or possibly even kill it. I'm not sure how entirely it works, but I saw that on a cooking show video, so we're doing it. Next, I'm going to take this lovely squeezy tube of garlic paste. So you could use mince, but I like the paste better. And I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of that. Just put that straight in. You could add more. We're all familiar here with the phrase that you measure garlic with your soul. But in our household, we also measure it with our stomachs. And some people that live in this household get stomach aches from too much garlic. I won't mention names, but it's not me. Lastly, I'm going to take the olive oil. I'm going to add 2 half teaspoons. You could use a full teaspoon, but I don't want to dirty any more dishes than I have to. 1, 2. So what I've put in so far, plus the garlic paste, is the equivalent of 1.5 teaspoons, which happens to be half a tablespoon. Last thing we need to add is a full tablespoon of this olive oil. The original recipe, which I actually did half for this version, called for 3 tablespoons, and that's why I ended up using the half teaspoon, just to make my math a little easier for adding the garlic paste. Take my lovely dough whisk. So if I can move this so you can see how we're going. And get this to start mixing it all together. You could do this by hand. It will take a bit longer and it will be frankly quite sticky. I just like this little tool to make my life easier. When I start mushing it all together. This is the part where it sort of just comes down to feel and knowing what your dough should feel like. If it's too dry, you add a little bit of water or a little bit of olive oil. In this case, it's a little wet still, so I'm going to add a little bit of flour. Different flours actually will absorb liquids differently, so depending on what flour you use with your recipe, you might just have to adjust a little. The reason I picked out this bowl, I was using a Pyrex bowl for a while and a wooden bowl before that, is that it's nice and wide. The Pyrex bowl actually was hurting my hands. It's got a better shape towards a mixing bowl, whereas this is just a little wider. The wooden bowl that I started with was great, except sometimes I would let water soak in it purposefully to get the extra dough on it here at the end. And it wasn't made to be that kind of bowl. It was made from different layers glued together. It was kind of like a fruit bowl that you'd put on your coffee table. And eventually one day I discovered that the dough was sticking through the edge of the cracks. So there's a very nice formed one, and if I poke it, see, it kind of bounces back. That means that the gluten has been formed. The gluten is what causes those air bubbles to actually be able to stay in your dough. Which is why you can't do this with things like rice flour, because there is no gluten. I once was dumb, and I attempted to make a full loaf of bread with just rice flour. And it did rise, and just cracked in half. So, leave that there. I've got an old tea towel that I use specifically for this purpose. This one actually, I believe, is a cotton towel from IKEA. It's gonna get it wet. If your kitchen is particularly cold, getting it wet with warmer water is better. I'm gonna pop this over the top to help keep my dough from forming sort of a dry crust. And we're gonna leave it alone for a good hour and a half to 2 hours. See you later. Hello again, Claire here. So it has now been 2 hours later, and look, that's a lot more poofy than we started. So what I have done also in the meantime is I've preheated the oven to 400. Got out this baking pan. And if you're like my sister who had a college job making pizzas, you can make it all nice and round. I'm pretty bad at that. So I'm gonna spray some olive oil on my pizza pan. And I've got this super handy dandy roller here, just for pizza crust. Smear that all over with olive oil as well. And this is also a handy way of doing it if you make sure you want to have crunchy crust. And mine never really comes out like thin and crunchy, but whatever. It's still easy. So, slap that in the middle there. Just kind of roll it out. Nice and even. The olive oil, of course, helps it not stick. The roller helps with a nice pleasing shape. I tend to get holes in the middle if I do it the other way because, like I said, I did not make pizzas in college. I worked at a clothing store. So, there's that. And now we're going to pop it in this nice warm oven at 400 degrees for 5 minutes. And pre-bake it a little before we put any toppings on. See you again later. Hey y'all, Claire again. So, pizza is out of the oven. First, because I can't have tomato sauce and my husband can't have dairy sauce, and we've come to an agreement. We're going to add this little nondescript thing, which is garlic olive oil. Yum, 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 yum. Yes, garlic, definitely, frequently. Just go ahead. Frequently is tasty here. Then on top of that, I will add za'atar seasoning, which comes from my favorite little place, Savory Spice Shop. Nom nom. Healthy dose of cheddar cheese. It's the same person who can't have the dairy sauce, can't have mozzarella. We like cheddar cheese best in this house anyway. Tasty, tasty cheese. Nice healthy topping. Then you can just add whatever toppings you want. I've got some pre-baked chicken with garlic on it here. And which Alan is definitely loitering to the side hoping I drop some, because that's how you do in a house with dogs, right? Artfully arrange the chicken. Then, lastly, I add some olives. It all goes back in the oven. Same temperature. Really? My pizza's evil? I never knew. That's so entertaining. For 7 minutes, maybe 8 if you've got a lot of toppings. And again, I'll see you on the flip side. Well, folks, our timer's done, so let's take a look. Looks nice and done to me. Oh, those crispy bits are where I didn't get the cheese on. That's just natural. We don't eat those, obviously. And that's how you make pizza, folks. Bye!